January 8th, 2025 wasn't just another day. It was the day Los Angeles burned, and I don't mean that metaphorically. Thick smoke blanketed the skies, choking the sunlight into a dull red disk. The sharp, acrid smell of ash filled the air, clinging to clothes and burning nostrils. It was like the city had been swallowed by an apocalyptic storm of fire and despair. I woke up to chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, helicopters roared overhead, and faint shouts echoed down the street. Yet, the most terrifying sound was the silence between it all, the eerie calm that made my skin crawl. Stepping outside, I could see it. Flames licking the horizon like some unholy beast closing in. The fire had started days ago in the mountains, but now it was here, our neighborhood. The wind carried embers and panic, making the inferno spread faster than anyone could control. People were running, cars were packed, and the streets were a mess of frantic activity. I lived alone, so when it came time to decide what to take, I froze. Important documents? Check. My laptop? Sure. A few old photos? Tossed into a bag. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. And then there was Max. Max wasn't just any dog. He was my German Shepherd, my best friend, and my protector. When the fire alarm started blaring, he was already on edge, pacing around and barking at the slightest noise. His instincts were sharper than mine, and I trusted him completely. "Stay close, buddy," I said, ruffling his fur as I grabbed his leash. He looked up at me with those intelligent brown eyes, his tail wagging slightly despite the chaos. If it weren't for Max, I might have already lost my nerve. The hours dragged on. Helicopters circled above like vultures, their searchlights cutting through the smoke. Evacuation orders came in waves, and while most of my neighbors fled, I stayed. Something inside me couldn't leave. Part of it was stubbornness, sure, but the other part, I wanted to help. By noon, the streets were packed with people trying to evacuate. Cars crawled forward, honking and inching toward the main roads. Smoke made it harder to breathe, and ash rained down like snow. That's when I saw him. A man in a black jacket, moving through the chaos like he had a purpose. At first, I thought he was a firefighter or some kind of volunteer. He carried buckets of water, helped people load their belongings into cars, and even pulled a scared cat out from under a porch. It was only when he turned toward me that I realized who it was. "Keanu Reeves?" I muttered under my breath, half convinced the smoke was messing with my head. But it wasn't. It was him. He didn't pause, didn't stop to explain why a Hollywood star was here in the middle of a disaster zone. He just worked. Calm, focused, and unshakable. Max barked once, his tail wagging as if he, too, recognized the actor. Keanu looked over, gave a slight nod, and then moved on to help an elderly man struggling with a suitcase. There was no grand announcement, no camera crew. He wasn't here for attention. He was here because he cared. It was contagious. Watching him work, I couldn't just stand there anymore. "Come on, Max," I said, tightening my grip on the leash as we followed him. Together, we moved from house to house, checking on neighbors who might have been left behind. Max's sharp nose helped us find people trapped in smoke-filled rooms, his bark cutting through the noise like a beacon. Keanu, calm as ever, carried children to safety and gave clear directions to those panicking. It wasn't long before another figure joined us. At first, I didn't recognize him. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. But the second he opened his mouth, that unmistakable voice gave him away. "Hey, you guys need a hand?" I turned, my jaw dropping. Dwayne Johnson. Yep, The Rock himself. And just like that, we had a team. Keanu, The Rock, Max, and me, a random guy from the neighborhood. "Let's keep moving," Keanu said, his voice steady. Dwayne nodded. "All right, let's do this." The three of us, plus Max, worked tirelessly, helping people evacuate and clearing paths through the debris. The Rock, with his sheer strength, moved fallen trees and overturned cars like they weighed nothing. Keanu's calm demeanor kept everyone focused, even as the fire crept closer. And Max was our scout, sniffing out danger and leading us where we were needed most. By the time night fell, we were exhausted, The fire hadn't reached our street yet, but it was only a matter of time. The air was thick with smoke, and the flames painted the sky an eerie orange. People were huddled in makeshift shelters, coughing and clutching what little they had managed to save. But amidst the chaos, we kept going. Because if we didn't, who would? That was just the beginning of our story. A story of courage, unity, and hope in the face of disaster. If you want to know what happens next, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. The night crept in, blanketing the chaos in darkness, but it did nothing to quiet the fire. The flames painted the sky in violent shades of orange and red, casting flickering shadows on the streets. Max stayed close to me, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings, his ears perked for the faintest sound. Keanu, the Rock, and I stood together at a crossroads. Around us, people stumbled through the haze, some clutching their loved ones, others carrying what little they could save. The air was thick with desperation, and smoke that clawed at your lungs like it had a vendetta. We need to check that block. Keanu pointed toward a row of houses barely visible through the thick, choking smog. It's too quiet. There might still be people there. Dwayne nodded, his broad shoulders tense with purpose. All right, let's split up. Faster that way. You good with that? Keanu hesitated for a split second before nodding. Just be careful. The fire's unpredictable. Max barked, almost like he understood the plan. I gave his leash a reassuring tug. We'll take the far side, I said, stepping forward with Max at my side. Keanu headed toward the nearest house, while the Rock disappeared into the haze, his large frame cutting through the smoke like a tank. The first house I checked was empty, at least it seemed that way. Max pulled at the leash, his nose pressed to the ground. His bark was sharp and urgent, pulling me toward the back of the house. There, huddled in a tiny bathroom, was a family of 3. A mother, father, and their young daughter. Come on, I urged, waving them forward. The little girl clutched a worn teddy bear, her face streaked with soot and tears. It's not safe here, Max barked again, leading the way out. The fire was creeping closer, the heat almost unbearable. I could feel the sweat dripping down my back, my throat raw from the smoke. Outside, I caught sight of Dwayne carrying an unconscious man over his shoulder like it was nothing. He glanced my way, giving a quick nod before heading toward the makeshift aid station we'd set up earlier. Keanu wasn't far behind, helping an elderly woman who could barely walk. His movements were calm, deliberate, as if the raging inferno around him didn't exist. We regrouped at the corner, all of us drenched in sweat, our faces streaked with soot. We're clear here, Keanu said, his voice hoarse. But the fire's spreading faster than I thought. The Rock exhaled, glancing toward the glowing horizon. We need to move these people to the main evacuation zone. It's too risky to stay here. Agreed, I said, looking around at the growing crowd of evacuees. Max barked again, his ears pinned back. He was facing the direction we'd just come from, his body tense. What is it, boy? I crouched down beside him, trying to see what had caught his attention. Then I heard it. A faint, muffled cry coming from one of the houses we thought was empty. Without a word, Keanu took off, sprinting toward the sound. The Rock and I followed, with Max leading the way. The house was almost fully engulfed, the fire roaring like a living thing. Smoke poured from the windows, and the heat was unbearable, even from the street. There, the Rock shouted, pointing to a window on the second floor. A small face appeared, just for a moment before disappearing again. A kid, Keanu said, already moving. Wait, I called after him, but he was already through the front door, disappearing into the flames. Let's go, the Rock said, his voice firm. I tied Max's leash to a lamppost and followed, the Rock right behind me. Inside, the heat was suffocating. Smoke filled every corner, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Over here, Keanu's voice cut through the chaos. We found him on the stairs, holding a small boy who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. The boy was coughing, his tiny hands clutching Keanu's shirt. Get him out, Keanu said, handing the boy to the rock. "I'll check for anyone else." "No way," the rock said, shifting the boy to one arm like he weighed nothing. "We stick together." Keanu didn't argue. Together, we made our way back outside, the fire closing in around us. The rock handed the boy off to a waiting paramedic while Keanu and I collapsed on the curb, coughing and gasping for air. Max was there in an instant, nuzzling me with his nose. I buried my face in his fur, grateful for his steady presence. "We need to do one more sweep," Keanu said, his voice rough but determined. The rock looked at him, then at me. "You in?" I nodded, standing on shaky legs. "Yeah, let's go." And just like that, we were back in the fire, searching for anyone who might have been left behind. The fire roared louder as we stepped back into the chaos. Max stayed close, his body tense as he sniffed the air, his ears swiveling at every sound. Keanu and the rock moved with purpose, their faces grim but focused. The thick smoke clung to everything, making it hard to see, harder to breathe. The house ahead of us was barely standing, its roof already caving in as flames licked at the walls. "This one's too far gone," I said, coughing into the damp cloth I held over my mouth. "We'll still check," Keanu replied, his voice steady. He adjusted the makeshift bandana tied around his face and stepped forward without hesitation. Dwayne, the rock, put a massive hand on my shoulder. "Stay with Max. We'll call you if we find anyone." His voice was deep, reassuring, but his expression was serious. Max let out a low growl, his nose pressed to the ground as he led me toward the side of the house. I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. He stopped suddenly, barking sharply, his body tense. "What is it, boy?" I crouched beside him, my eyes scanning the area. That's when I saw it. A faint glimmer of movement through the thick haze. "Keanu! Dwayne!" I shouted, waving them over. They appeared in an instant, their figures cutting through the smoke. "What's wrong?" Keanu asked, his voice sharp. "There," I said, pointing toward the movement. "Someone's in there." Keanu didn't wait. He sprinted toward the figure, his lean frame disappearing into the smoke. The rock and I exchanged a quick glance before following, Max bounding ahead of us. Inside, the heat was overwhelming. The walls creaked and groaned, threatening to collapse at any moment. Keanu's voice cut through the chaos. "Over here." We found him crouched beside a woman who was unconscious, her face pale and streaked with soot. Max barked urgently, circling her as if willing her to wake up. "Get her out," Dwayne said, stepping forward. He scooped the woman into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "This place is coming down. Now." Keanu nodded, his eyes scanning the room one last time. "Go. I'm right behind you." We moved as quickly as we could, the floor beneath us groaning under our weight. Max led the way, his sharp instincts guiding us through the smoke-filled maze. The moment we stepped outside, the house let out a deafening crack and collapsed in on itself, sending a cloud of ash and embers into the air. The rock laid the woman on the ground, checking her pulse. "She's breathing," he said, relief evident in his voice. Paramedics rushed over, taking her from his care. Keanu stood beside me, his chest heaving as he pulled the damp cloth away from his face. "Close one," he muttered, his eyes still fixed on the smoldering ruins of the house. Before we could catch our breath, Max barked again. This time it was sharper, more insistent. He tugged at his leash, pulling me toward a narrow alley between two buildings. "What now?" the rock asked, his tone laced with both concern and determination. "Let's see," Keanu said, already following Max. The alley was dark, the air thick with smoke and the faint scent of something burning. Max stopped suddenly, his ears pinned back as he let out a low growl. And then we saw it, a small cage barely visible in the dim light. Inside were 3 terrified puppies, their tiny bodies trembling as they whimpered softly. Keanu crouched beside the cage, his expression softening. "It's okay," he said quietly, his voice soothing. He reached for the latch, but it was stuck, the metal warped from the heat. "I've got it," the rock said, stepping forward. With one swift motion, He ripped the cage door off its hinges, freeing the puppies. They bolted out, but Max was there to corral them, his instincts kicking in. He nudged them gently, keeping them close as we moved back toward the main road. By the time we reached the aid station, the puppies were calmer, huddled together beside Max. People gathered around, offering water and blankets as we caught our breath. "You guys are something else," one of the volunteers said, shaking his head in disbelief. "That fire's no joke. And you're out there like it's nothing." Keanu glanced at the rock, then at me. "It's not nothing," he said quietly. "It's everything." The rock clapped him on the shoulder. "Damn right." Max let out a soft woof, as if in agreement. But the fire wasn't done with us yet. As night fell, the flames grew stronger, driven by the relentless wind. Our aid station became a hub of activity, with people bringing supplies, offering help, and sharing stories. Keanu and the Rock worked tirelessly, organizing efforts and coordinating with firefighters. Max stayed by my side, his presence a constant source of comfort. "We've got a long night ahead of us," the Rock said, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the fire raged on. Keanu nodded, his jaw set. "Then let's get to it." And so we did, diving back into the inferno, united by a shared purpose, to save as many lives as we could, no matter the cost. And just like that, the story takes an unexpected turn. But what happens next? Will Keanu Reeves, the Rock, Max the dog, and the rest of the group manage to keep pushing forward through the chaos? You won't want to miss what comes next. If you've been enjoying this journey so far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's the best way to stay updated on the next part of this gripping adventure. Let us know in the comments what you think of the story so far, and stay tuned for the next chapter. You won't want to miss it.